Hello and welcome one more time. My name is Alex Centeno with Mercados, and in this exciting episode, we are going to be taking a look at how to apply the MKDS 2484 Plus PowerGrade. This PowerGrade is going to be available at AlexTheCreative.com soon, and you'll be able to access that in the description below. So if you're interested in purchasing that PowerGrade, then you can do so there. Today we're going to be looking at the process of installing a PowerGrade and then using this particular PowerGrade. So let's get to it. Alrighty, so I am here in DaVinci Resolve 18, and I have pulled in some clips and created a timeline. So when you first purchase your PowerGrade, you're going to be presented with the zip file. You're going to unzip that file, and from there you're going to import it into a PowerGrade folder. So you go to the color tab inside of DaVinci Resolve, and on the left hand side you're going to see the gallery, and you're going to open that up, and then you can have different folders. I'm just going to use this one as a reference here, but you can create new PowerGrade album folders if you need to, so you can create a new one if you want, but I'm going to be using the PG one, and then I'm going to right click, and then from here I'm going to click where it says import. I'm going to select the folder where I uncompressed my zip file, and then I am just going to select the DRX and hit import. And from there you're going to see that the MKDS 2084 Plus PowerGrade has been imported. Excellent. So let's go ahead and apply this. So how do you apply the grade? In order to apply the grade, all you have to do is just right click and apply grade. And then this is going to apply the node tree that has the grade itself. It has 4 components. The first one is just an empty node so that you can start without having to remember your shortcuts for creating new nodes. So this is going to be your node to start doing white balance, exposure correction, things of that nature. Then we're going to have the transform itself. We're going to have the 2484 plus curve, so the actual PowerGrade itself. And then we have just color shifts that are similar to the color shifts found in the 2383 codec film emulation. So you don't need this necessarily, but if you want to emulate the 2383 colors and hues, then you can use this LUT. So let's take a look first at what the transform does. So if I go to effects, you'll see that I'm going from the Panasonic V-Gamut and V-Log. So these are my inputs. And I'm going to P3 DCI and Cineon Film Log. Other than that, nothing else there. Basically, I'm just transforming the V-Log to a Cineon log footage. Once that's done, then it takes the Cineon log and goes through a process, a pretty defined process of actually creating a very unique curve for each one of the colors, and then of course applies the color shifts for each one of the colors. All right, so in this case, I would probably just, while I'm looking at the scopes, I would probably just shift my exposure a little bit. I can do that with curves. I can do that with regular primary color wheels or secondary transforms, or even like log wheels or HDR, whatever it's needed for my footage to look the way that I want it. But in this case, you can see that MKDS 2484 looks really, really sharp. Let's get to another example. So same thing, all I have to do is right click and apply the grade, and you can see that it just out of the blue just does a really good job. As you can see, you get like a little bit of not posterization, it's more like a macro blocking that happens with every single 3D LUT. And so not necessarily you want to be using the 3D LUT color shifts. So it is one of those things that if you really like the colors of the 2383, then you might introduce them even if it's not 100% opacity. So what you can do is, instead of like turning it off completely, then you can just go to the key output and then reduce depending on how much of the effect you want on those colors, and until you start noticing more the macro blocking. Macro blocking is going to happen no matter what, but that's one of the benefits of actually having the PowerGrade, the actual curves, instead of like just using a lookup table that replicates film emulation, because like you're going to get macro blocking everywhere. So that's one of the benefits. So another example is this beach. We have like a very saturated highlight, which usually is what leads to problems. And so if we apply the grade, you can see that it looks really good, really clean. The sky, which is blue and is really saturated, looks really, really good, and with very little of that macro blocking. And that's even with the color shift. If we remove the color shift, it's even cleaner. But I mean, if I go into close to 500%, you can see that it's there, but much, much better than if you were using just a color lookup table. Let's look at this example here. I'm just going to apply it. This is 1080p and slow motion. So you can see that it actually works really, really well. It's just beautiful. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful footage right out of the box. You get really beautiful footage. Let's take a look at this one. Apply grade. In this node, we can just do some corrections if you feel like it's a little bit punchy. And of course, you can do other corrections. For example, you can do noise reduction before, you can do white balancing. So if I was doing white balancing, I would add a node before and then change the temperature depending on what I need, and then continue with my traditional grading after the fact. All right, and our final example is another complicated kind of footage type, which is very, very low light. This is at the very end of a sunset, and what you would normally see here is like a lot of macro blocking because the sun is already gone, and you get a lot of color in this section, and it is in the highlights. And so by default, logarithmic profiles devote a lot of attention to the lower section, to the shadows and to the lift area, rather than devoting it to the highlight section. And so when you have a lot less bits inside of the highlights, then that information tends to get lost a little bit. So when it's saturated and it's coming from Vlog, it's going to be a little bit complicated. And so that's kind of the tricky part when you have a well-lit subject. And when you use the Vlog inside of the Panasonic GH5, you used it by exposing about one full stop above what is needed, then you're probably not going to have any issues whatsoever, even with a 3D lookup table. But things like this, which is kind of a sunset or the end of a sunset, you have like a lot of color saturation inside of a highlight. That's where it's tricky, and I'm sure that you're familiar with that. And you can see that this PowerGrade does a fantastic job. It makes everything look so cinematic. So it's just gorgeous. So anyways, I hope that this has been beneficial, and like I said, it's should be available soon, so you'll be able to purchase this from AlexTheCreative.com. Thank you so much. Take care.